2 of the
Lady Black Kaleidoscope Project.
Yay! Made it through day 1. So I'm back again with another episode. So the topic of today's episode is dun, 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 dun,
The Adventures of a Super Only Child.
Yay! So, you're probably wondering,
What is a super only child? And does a super only child have superpowers? Ooh.
so super only child. Basically, it's not just a foreign term. It's not just something I made up. Even though it would have been cool just to make it up because it sounds so basic. Basically, what a super only child is when an only child has had an only child, and that's exactly what happened to me. I am an only child of an only child. My mom was the only daughter and only child of my grandmother, and I am the same thing for her. I am the only child and the only daughter of my mom. And then the most important question, of course, is does a super only child have superpowers? Yeah, of course, we totally do. Whether you're a super only child or a functional only child, which is basically when your siblings are way older or way younger than you. If so, like Barack Obama, he's a functional only child because he was way older than his younger sister. And I have a friend, Lisa, who is like way younger than her older brother and sister. So basically, they're functionally only children because they've spent most of their lives without siblings. They usually were like adolescents, you know. They've spent their whole life without siblings. So anyway, super only children. We have superpowers, of course we do. I mean, come on. So what are these superpowers? Okay. Number 1. Let's keep it up here. Number 1. We're super independent. Absolutely. We are absolutely super independent. I am somebody who I'm just used to holding it down. Like I'm used to doing things by myself all my life. Um, you know, I've been holding it down by myself because I'm the only child. It's like, me versus the world. Or sometimes it's me versus my parents because you're the only child. So you learn to fight your own battles and do those things, which I've done. I've always forged my own path. I've always forged my own things. I mean, a little bit of a downside is that it's hard for me to always lean on other people for help because I'm just so used to just doing it and taking care of that, myself, because that's what I've used to been doing, especially when I was in being in private school, all white schools from 1st to 12th grade. Like I was the only one a lot of times, so I'm just my only childrenness, my only childness, definitely served me well in school because I was okay with being on my own, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I was just like isolated or whatever. I definitely was incredibly outgoing. Only children, they always say that like we're socially inept with our peers. We actually have a lot of incentive to be socially adept because we have no siblings, so we want to have friends who are like siblings to us. So we're a lot of times, a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us are really outgoing because we're always looking for those sibling-like friendships. So we are ridiculously outgoing. Number 2, super soliloquist. Hence this entire channel. I'm really good at talking to myself, and this is essentially what I'm doing. This is virtual, and you're seeing this clip right now. I'm essentially talking to myself. I'm looking at a little camera on my laptop, and I'm talking to myself, which I've been, I've prepared my whole life for this. So I'm very, very good at talking to myself and having conversations with myself. And I have always had conversations with like my imaginary friends. And who, or imaginary anybody. It's a good way. I mean, some people I'm walking down the street, they might think I'm a little nuts because I'm talking to myself. But the good thing is about with technology, and people have Bluetooth and wireless and Wi-Fi and stuff in their ear, people just think you're just talking on a phone, but actually I'm talking to myself. So which, you might be seeing someone talking and they might be a super only child or an only child talking to themselves and having conversations with themselves. So, not to say that there are other people that aren't good at talking to themselves, but I think us only children, we definitely have an advantage in that situation, in those situations. Okay. Number 3, super imagination. Super imagination. My imagination and creativity muscles are like off the chain, because I've had so much time where I've had to come up with things to do because my mom worked all the time. My grandmother was like, especially when I had vacations or during the summer, my grandmother was watching soap operas. And as much as I loved Young and the Restless and General Hospital and Bold and Beautiful and those things, I didn't want to watch that all the time when I was a kid. So I would go upstairs and be in this room actually, and just escape to my fairy world, or not really fairy world. I'm not that way. Not that there's anything wrong with it. There are a lot of, fantasy is really big right now, with like Game of Thrones and Witcher and everything. But anyway, so I'm really good at coming up with ideas and things like that. And my imagination, creativity muscles, hence coming up with this channel. I think that sometimes I wonder if they're overdeveloped, my imagination, creativity muscles. I'm also left-handed, which kind of gives me an advantage, but I'm going to talk about that in another episode. But yeah, actually a friend of mine, a real friend of me, not an imaginary friend of mine, which I do have. And actually I'm going to talk about my imaginary, well, not imaginary because the person exists, BFF in my head in like a week or so. So stay tuned for that. But a real friend of mine, who was my best friend at the time, he was just like, oh my goodness, like, I want to actually go in your mind and see what's going on because you have such, wacky ideas. And then he like kind of paused and was like, on second thought, maybe not. I mean, my mind goes like a million miles and it's like zoom, 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 like it's crazy, like, so it's, but I have a super imagination, which is great. And it's helped me out of a lot of jams. Yeah. So number 4, super charmer of adults. Yeah. Only children, we're used to being around adults. Our parents, our best friends growing up were our parents. I know a lot of the only children that I do know, they have a really close relationship with their parents because they were all we have. They were our playmates. They were our best friends growing up. My mom and I were ridiculously close because she's an only child, and then I'm an only child, and then my grandmother, when she was alive, we were like the 3 musketeers. We were a very, very close unit of people, and then my mom and I are still really close. She's my best friend. I don't know how she feels about me, but hopefully she loves me, obviously. But we're very, very, very close. So yeah, I've always been able to charm adults, which is good. It's helped me a lot out of a lot of jams. You're probably thinking you've been in a lot of jams, Tracy, and I'm just like, yeah, I've kind of been in a lot of jams, but I've been able to get them out. So it's been a rollicking ride my life has been thus far. So yeah, it's good to be a super charmer of adults because and that's been all my life. Whether I'm an adult now, but even when I was adults still like me. They just have always liked me because I guess I know how to talk to them because I'm used to talking to them because I do it at home all the time, and I've done it ever since I was a kid. I was always included in every conversation and everything like that. So yeah. So next question. What is it like for a super only child during childhood, adolescence, and adulthood? Okay, so we'll start with childhood. Childhood was pretty okay. It wasn't too bad. I was not someone who struggled with wanting a sibling. Sometimes I did. I think I wanted a little sister. I think, especially when I went to my school, because I was in classes. I mean, I had a lot of Irish and Italian Catholics in my class, and in my elementary school, and they had like 2 and 3, 4 siblings. I'm like, man, I wouldn't like to be a sibling. And it, of course, it never happened. My mom didn't have another child, and so I was a little sad about that. But it was pretty okay. I mean, I got all the gifts at Christmas. I got all the attention from my parents. I probably wouldn't have been able to. My mom wouldn't have been able to even afford private school if it wasn't for me being an only child, and so that was good. I mean, the education part of it was. The other part, that's another episode for another time. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad. I mean, I've lived in this room. I've had a lot of adventures, daydreams in this room. It's very interesting. In my super imagination. So, I mean, don't go there, but yeah. Anyway, adolescence. That was the only time when I really, well, from adolescence on, I wanted a sibling, but during childhood, no. Adolescence, I always wanted a bigger brother, older brother, who could have taken me to the Father Door dance and stuff like that. My dad was on the sidelines of my life with my parents. When I talk about my parents, I talk about my mother and my grandmother. That's what I mean. From here on out, that's what I mean when I'm talking about my parents, my mom and my grandmom. So my mom and my maternal grandmother. So I always wish that I had an older brother who was like 2 years older than me, that went to St. Joe's Prep, which was the brother school for my high school, and they run the city, but that's a different thing. I always wanted him so I could meet his friends. Not like he probably would have been really protective of me and stuff like that, but there are times when I wish I had an older brother. And then it was, same thing. It was, I didn't really have a lot of friends outside of school, so I was in here. I was doing a lot of creative things, watching movies, making mixtapes, which really dates me. But I had a lot of fun doing that. And so I always had fun in this room. I have a soft spot for my room. So adulthood, this is when it was the most difficult. So when I moved back home after going to college in New York. I went to Barnard College and I finished in 2005. And I moved back home and I've been here ever since. So I've slept in this bed, right here ever since I came back home. Except when I went away on vacation, but whatever. So it was hard because pretty soon afterwards, my grandmother, who was 95 at the time, got sick. And my mom, she didn't have any only children. She didn't have any siblings. And then I didn't have any siblings. So we both kind of had to come together and, do what we needed to do. We had to come together. And it was hard. I mean, tomorrow I'm actually going to talk about that. Caregiving as a young adult, I felt very conflicted and everything like that. But sometimes we both were like, man, I wish we had a sibling. It would have been so nice to have a sibling. But that didn't happen. Especially as you get older, I think I've seen some siblings, even if they thought when they were younger, they got really close when they were older. So there are times definitely when I've wanted a sibling, especially as an adult. It would have been nice. But, I mean, I still, I don't have it. I'm an only child, so, I guess it makes my friendship so important because I don't have siblings. So friendship has always been important. I always put 1,000% into my friendships because I don't have siblings. Okay, so what is life like for a super only child during quarantine? It's basically the same. It's not too much different. My mom and I we're only children, so we're using the same coping mechanisms as we did before. So I think this is the one time when it's like, hey, everybody, I said to one of my friends, I was like, everybody's like, welcome to my world, because I'm used to being on my own and having to use all my skills, all my superpowers, my imagination and my independence and all those things to help me deal with this pandemic and everything like that. So, which is good. And I'm really, and my mom and I, we just, we're used to being around each other. So it's been fine. And I think that's one of the advantages that any kind of only child, whether it's a functional only child, a regular only child, and a super only child, I think we actually have a slight advantage in dealing with being in quarantine. So that's good. Okay, so I want to make this video shorter. So anyway, I have a poem for you that I'm going to read. And it's called, aptly named, Only Child by Billy Collins. So I hope it's not my experience, but it's his experience as being an only child, but I can definitely relate to some of it. So here we go. I never wished for a sibling, boy or girl. Center of the universe, I had the back of my parents' car all to myself. I could look out one window and then slide over to the other window without quibbling over territorial rights. And whenever I played a game on the floor of my bedroom, it was always my turn. Not until my parents entered their 90s did I long for a sister. A nurse I named Mary, who worked in a hospital 5 minutes away from their house and who would drop everything, even a thermometer, whenever I called. Be there in the jiff and on my way were her two of her favorite expressions and mine. And now that my parents are dead, I wish I could meet Mary for coffee every now and then at that Italian place with the blue awning where we would sit and reminisce, even on rainy days. I would gaze into her eyes and see my parents, my mother looking out of Mary's right eye and my father staring out of her left, which would remind me of what an odd duck I was as a child, a little prince, a loner who would break off from his gang of friends on a Saturday and find a hedge to hide behind. And I would tell Mary all about that too, and never embarrass her by asking her non-existence. Maybe we would have another espresso and a pastry, and I would pay the bill and walk her home. So, I hope you enjoyed today and learned a little, if you aren't an only child, learn a little bit more what it's like to be an only child, specifically a super only child, which I am. So, once again, keep on keeping on, live out loud, and embrace your kaleidoscope soul. Okay, bye everyone. Have a good day.